November in Europe is typically a time of relentless rain, gray skies, and chilly winds, not snow, especially in the lowlands. The air is damp, the trees are bare, and the roads glisten with rainwater, not ice. For most people living in these regions, snow is something reserved for the distant mountains or the heart of winter, not the early days of November. But in 2025, something extraordinary happened. Northern Portugal and southern England awoke to a thick, silent blanket of snow, transforming familiar landscapes overnight. Streets, gardens, and rooftops were suddenly unrecognizable, covered in dazzling white. The world outside seemed to pause, muffled by the unexpected snowfall. This wasn't just a light dusting that would melt by noon. It was a rare, significant snowfall for coastal towns and valleys that almost never see snow before Christmas. The snow piled up on doorsteps and cars, creating scenes more reminiscent of a postcard from Scandinavia than the usually mild Atlantic coast. Social media buzzed with images of snow-covered gardens and streets as people rushed to capture the moment. Meteorologists scrambled to explain the anomaly, fielding questions from curious residents and news outlets alike. The sudden transformation became the talk of the town, with neighbors sharing photos and stories online. The Atlantic's warmth usually keeps these regions snow-free, acting as a protective barrier against early winter storms. But this year, a rare alignment of atmospheric patterns broke the rules, allowing cold air to sweep in and create perfect conditions for snow. Experts called it a once-in-a-generation event. Children built their very first snowmen, their laughter echoing through the frosty air. Commuters faced icy roads and unexpected delays, while families ventured outside to play in the fresh snow. For many, it was a magical experience, a reminder that weather can still surprise us, no matter how predictable it seems. For millions, it was a shared moment of wonder, and at the same time, a logistical headache. Trains were delayed. Cars struggled to navigate slippery streets. And neighbors came together to help each other through the chaos. This November snowfall became both a breathtaking spectacle and a real challenge for communities unaccustomed to winter's early arrival. It was a day that would be remembered for years, a reminder of nature's unpredictability and the beauty that can come from the unexpected. To truly grasp just how shocking this snow was, it helps to first picture a typical November in northern Portugal and southern England. These are places where the weather is almost a character in daily life, predictable, persistent, and rarely extreme. These regions, shaped by the ever-present Atlantic, expect mild temperatures and endless rain, not snow. The skies are usually a blanket of gray, and the air is thick with drizzle that seems to last for days. In Porto and Braga, daytime temperatures hover comfortably in the mid-teens Celsius. In southern England, it's usually 9 to 12 degrees, with only the rarest hint of frost in the early mornings. People wear light jackets and autumn leaves glisten with dew rather than ice. The landscape is perpetually soggy. Umbrellas are an everyday accessory, and snow boots are left forgotten by the door, gathering dust year after year. The idea of snow is almost a joke, something for postcards, not real life. The Atlantic acts as a giant radiator, its waters keeping harsh cold at bay and making early snow nearly unthinkable. The ocean's influence is so strong that it shapes not just the weather, but the entire rhythm of life. November is predictable, wet, windy, and mild. Farmers are busy finishing their harvests, and gardeners prepare flower beds for winter, all under a steady drizzle. It's a season of routine, with few surprises. That's why the sudden, heavy snow wasn't just a surprise. It was a meteorological shock that upended daily life. Streets and parks that should have been wet and muddy were suddenly blanketed in white. The established rhythm was broken, and the region's expectations were turned upside down. Shops closed, parks emptied, and traffic ground to a halt as people tried to make sense of the unfamiliar scene. This was not just weather. It was a disruption of the familiar, a rare event that left everyone reeling, reminding them just how powerful and unpredictable nature can be. Why is lowland snow so rare here in November? The Atlantic Ocean is the main reason. Prevailing westerly winds pick up warmth and moisture from the sea, making the air too mild for snow by the time it reaches land. Even when cold air tries to push in, it's quickly warmed by the ocean, especially in early winter. The jet stream usually reinforces this, steering mild air straight into Western Europe. For snow to fall, the jet stream must buckle. Cold air must arrive directly, and the sea mustn't have time to warm it up. All these factors rarely align in November, making snow on lowland beaches or vineyards a true rarity. That's why this event was so startling. The usual barriers simply failed. It was a meteorological longshot that paid off. So, what changed in November 2025? The jet stream buckled and a massive high-pressure system parked over the North Atlantic. This blocking high diverted the usual mild, moist air and opened a direct path for Arctic winds. Suddenly, southern England and northern Portugal were exposed to frigid air, straight from the north. As this Arctic air swept south, it picked up moisture over the seas, priming it for snow. The cold was relentless, dropping temperatures 10 degrees below average and overwhelming the Atlantic's usual warming effect. The result, a direct, sustained blast of winter, with snow falling where it almost never does. This atmospheric shift set the stage for an unprecedented November snowfall. The normal order was completely upended. The Arctic air's journey was nothing short of dramatic, a powerful mass of frigid air surging southward from the polar regions, sweeping across the northern Atlantic with relentless force. This wasn't just a typical cold front, it was a true atmospheric event, setting the stage for a remarkable transformation across Europe. As the Arctic air swept over the churning waters of the North Sea, it picked up moisture and unleashed heavy sea-effect snow showers. Southern and eastern England, more accustomed to rain than snow, suddenly found themselves blanketed in white, with snowflakes swirling along the coastline and piling up on the cliffs. The cold air mass didn't stop there. It pressed onward, crossing the Channel and the Bay of Biscay, its icy grip still strong enough to bring rare snowfalls to the hills of northern Spain and Portugal. These regions, usually mild in winter, were transformed into scenes more reminiscent of Scandinavia. Even coastal cities like Porto, where snow is almost unheard of, saw flurries driven in from the Atlantic. Locals watched in awe as snowflakes drifted down onto the city's historic streets and riverfront, a meteorological rarity that became the talk of the town. Daytime temperatures in southern England barely rose above freezing, with icy winds making it feel even colder. In northern Portugal, thermometers hovered just above zero, and people's breath hung in the air as they navigated snow-covered streets. The cold snap persisted for nearly a week, with each day bringing fresh snow and no sign of a thaw. Fields, rooftops, and roads disappeared beneath a growing blanket of white as the relentless cold refused to let go. Snow accumulated layer by layer, turning familiar landscapes into magical winter wonderlands. But beauty came with a cost. Major disruptions hit transport, daily routines, and local businesses as communities struggled to adapt to the unusual conditions. The persistence of the Arctic feed made this event truly historic. News outlets reported on the rare snow, and residents in both England and Portugal marveled at the sight, capturing photos and sharing stories of a winter they'd never forget. This wasn't just a brief cold snap, it was a full preview of winter arriving a month ahead of schedule. November, usually a time of autumn rains, was suddenly transformed into a scene straight out of midwinter. The region was caught in a rare, relentless grip of cold, with people bundling up and cities adapting to a deep freeze that few had ever experienced before. It was a polar plunge that truly disrupted the norm. This snowfall shattered records across both regions. Brighton saw its earliest and heaviest November snow ever, with iconic landmarks blanketed in white. In northern Portugal, coastal cities like Viana do Castelo recorded accumulating snow for the first time in November. Temperatures plunged to record lows. London barely above freezing. Braganza hitting -9 Celsius. Social media exploded with images. Children seeing snow for the first time. Surfers gazing at snow-covered beaches, and vineyards dusted in white. These weren't just weather stats, they were cultural moments connecting generations to stories of legendary cold. For many, it was a once-in-a-lifetime event, blending awe with practical challenges. The snow became a shared memory, instantly woven into local lore. The snow's impact was immediate and profound. In southern England, transport ground to a halt. Motorways clogged, schools closed, and airports delayed. Public services scrambled, but the sheer scale of the event overwhelmed efforts to keep roads clear. Many communities were effectively snowed in, with travel advisories keeping people home. Yet, amid the chaos, there was wonder. Children played, neighbors helped each other, and the novelty brought people together. News channels filled with photos and stories of both disruption and delight. The snow revealed both the fragility of infrastructure and the resilience of communities. It was a day of chaos and joy all at once. In northern Portugal, the response mixed, surprise with resilience, especially inland. Farmers rushed to protect crops from frost, while road closures isolated villages and disrupted supply chains. Civil protection teams worked non-stop, focusing on the vulnerable and elderly. Coastal residents, many seeing snow for the first time, flocked to the hills for snow tourism, sometimes worsening traffic. Energy demand soared as people cranked up the heat, testing the power grid but avoiding major outages. The event highlighted the need for better insulation and emergency planning. Communities checked on neighbors, and a sense of solidarity grew in the face of adversity. The cold snap became both a test and a celebration of community spirit. This extraordinary November snowstorm left a lasting impression on both regions. It reminded us that, despite our technology, nature can still upend our expectations in an instant. The event exposed vulnerabilities in infrastructure, but also sparked conversations about preparedness and resilience. It united communities, offering moments of wonder and shared experience amid the disruption. The snow became a story to pass down, a reminder of the week when winter arrived early. It also raised questions about our changing climate and the unpredictability of extreme weather. While one cold snap doesn't define a trend, it shows how global shifts can bring local surprises. Above all, it taught us to respect the power and unpredictability of the weather.